there's one way of defining it, maybe the most concrete way, which is anything multicellular and alive that isn't a plant and isn't a fungus. So that's a definition that works pretty well for scientists, not so well for historians, or in fact for most other people. They tend to use it in a more restrictive way. It often doesn't include creatures that are very dissimilar to us, insects or jellyfish or things like that. And sometimes it doesn't include us. And all these definitions, restrictive or not, have all kinds of consequences. They have ethical implications. They have political implications. Binary oppositions are inherently problematical, reductive, misrepresentational, but very convenient, necessary therefore. And in fact, all categories have their problems. Maybe the most important one, historically, certainly the most significant one, is the difference between wild animals and domesticated animals. Within both of those categories, there are herbivores and there are carnivores. The implications for both for the animals and for our relation to them, extremely different. Their impact on the environment and their susceptibility to environmental challenges, also very different. Within the category of domestication, there are livestock, very different from pets, which are in effect a luxury use of animals, and also very different from working animals that are used for sporting purposes or hunting, that is for collaboration with people, as opposed to animals that are basically used to produce either meat or fiber, or again, animals that are used for traction as laborers. There's a way of understanding animals that distinguishes between those that are economically valuable as opposed to those that are pests, in effect, animal weeds. Although, if you look at, it's very hard to say that one species is always one or always another. It's easy to see the wild explosions of ungulates in various parts of the New World as conversions of animals from economically prized to weedy. Native species are different from invasives, at least from the perspective of people. From the perspective of the animals themselves, they're not so different. That is, they are motivated by basically the same set of urges or goals. And again, as with economic animals as opposed to pests, an animal that's native in one place, native, accommodated to, prized, can become a weed, an invasive species, when transplanted to someplace else. A fascinating example is the camels of Central Australia. But it must also be said that the very contingent nature of this kind of label is shown by some animals which, although clearly not native, are not persecuted, indeed are prized, because they're considered to be particularly nice. So the parrots that have settled in New York and Chicago are appreciated, even though it's perfectly clear that there have never been any parrots there historically, but it's just so nice to see a parrot if you're in New York. So anyway, just to conclude, I'll say that, probably obvious, what category we place a particular animal in has enormous consequences. It has consequences, of course, for the animal, but also for our relationship to them, our understanding of them, and the deployment of these categories is often based on a set of desires or understandings that perhaps are as much emotional or political as they are material or scientific.